Hi, I'm Saren.
And I'm Ray.
We're your Spider Baby hosts from To Know Her Is to Fear Her, a Spider-Woman podcast, as well as proud members of the collective.
You're listening to Capes and Lunatics. Gimme, gimme.
Hi, this is Phil, and I'm here to make sure you know all about the Capes and Lunatics Patreon. Don't miss out on all new episodes of Wade's World, Boob Windows and Long Boxes, our Hard R movie reviews, and so much more, all completely uncensored. Access starts for as little as $1 a month, full videos when you pledge $3 a month. Check us out at the link in all of our show notes, or just go straight to patreon.com/capesandlunatics. Hope to see you there.
This is Luca Perich, and you're listening to the Capes and Lunatics Sidekicks podcast.
Recording has started. Hello and welcome once again to Superconnectivity, the Evergreen episodes. I am your host, Charlie the Professor Esser, and with me as always is my blue-eyed bomber from the Burger Pits.
Phil, me, and Perich.
Thank you, Philip. Glad to have you, as always. Now, normally in Superconnectivity, we're talking about some recent news. We'll talk what comic books came out to that we didn't get to on our sister show, Capes and Lunatics. I didn't want to call it our parent show because technically Superconnectivity predates Capes and Lunatics. Just to be clear, because what we are doing today is we're going back to the very first blog post by Superconnectivity, the very first episode of Superconnectivity, very first beginnings of Superconnectivity, which was how Loki, God of Mischief, will eventually take over the entire MC universe. And look who was right, Rob. For those who don't remember, my very first blog post, I believe, I could be wrong because my memory is very bad, but I want to say the first episode with Rob Southgate as special guest host, which is how he got me into this whole podcasting thing, if you will remember many years ago, back when this was all the Nuff Said Network on Southgate Media Group. Yes, we're still under that tutelage, but Phil, he's his own CEO of his own rebel organization within the thing. This is like how whenever like a big company, they start spinning off divisions, and so like he could sell off Capes and Lunatics. It could be spun off into its own organization, or it could be subsumed into the larger. You never know with these business things. It's billions of dollars at play every day, guys. Just those who don't know about the lucrative podcast industry. But anyway, getting back to this story. So my very first thing was about how Loki has an Infinity Stone, and he's getting an Infinity Stone, and how Thanos is not the brightest guy because he gave away one of his Infinity Stones to Loki to go get another Infinity Stone. Thanos, he's not. You can see why he lost. I am of the honest opinion that there was actually just one universe in which Thanos got the stones. I think in most of the others, he just trips over his own feet and falls down the hole in Vormir. It's like, well.
Do you think he was just like, oh, well, even if Loki has one, eventually I'll have 5, so.
Yeah, but that's exactly what Loki did, which is what I also brought up when he gives the ether to the Collector, intentionally to make the Collector get all the other stones for him. Then he'd just take them all from the Collector. Because Loki's a manipulator. But today we are talking Loki from his very first origins back in Venus number 9, I believe it is, right?
I think that's
Venus number 9, 1948.
Whoa.
And for those of you who are asking, really, that's his first appearance? And the answer is no, not in any conceivable way except that he's called Loki. We get a guy in this who, funnily enough, looks kind of like a Space Phantom, a little bit. Actually, really, someone else looks like the Space Phantom. And man, I gotta tell you, the Venus books, they so want to be a superhero book, but they're a romance book. And it is a very interesting thing while you're reading it Because you're like, at every time, like, okay, at what point does she use her godlike strength to punch a guy? Never. It is always just Star Foxian roofie powers.
Oh, jeez.
Which is literally what the gods have in this story. So, basically, when you look at a god, you fall in love. Because they're just that, well, at least Apollo and Venus. Just, yeah, it's very weird. It's very mind controlling and a little disturbing. So I want to get to the cover. There's the cover. Venus. Whom the gods would destroy. Whom the gods. So if you've ever wondered where that line comes from, apparently it's Venus issue 9.
Oh my.
This was a 10-cent comic book back in the day. 52 freaking pages of story for 10 cents, kids. That is, and they've got text stories, they've got 2 backup stories, and another backup Venus story after 3 full chapters of Venus's adventures.
Wow.
So yeah, you got a lot for your dime back then, you know. Not even any ads from what I can tell. So that's pretty good. We get a quick origin of Venus at the start, which is basically, you know, she came to Earth, Della, the dark-haired, that's how you know she's the villain. She's the Veronica. She's not the Betty. Della was in love with Wit, the publisher. Oh yeah, and there's our Loki, who looks a lot like Satan there. You know, he's got the pink. Basically, Della has been wearing Wit down for years, and then all of a sudden Venus shows up, and he only has eyes for Venus. But Venus only has eyes for Wit. And there's some great items in this, because there is that idea where she's fallen in love with a mortal, and she will now love that mortal for eternity. And it's pretty, it makes you realize, like, whoa, that, because, you know, everyone, as we've said before, you know, mortals always think, oh, what would it matter to a person who lived forever if they fell in love with a mortal? That mortal is just passing through their life. And it's like, no, if you actually love that person, it's like, I'm sure you still cry when you think about your grandparents being dead, you know? Because those are your grandparents, and you love them, and they died, and you go on, and it's still really painful to realize they're gone. You feel the same thing when your parents leave. You feel the same thing when anyone in your limited life leaves. And it doesn't stop just because, oh, that happened 50 years ago. Yeah, and it still hurts, you know? Mm-hmm. That expands outward. But anyway, essentially in this one, you have the fact that on the planet Olympus, so that was my first thing I thought was interesting, is that there is a planet of Olympus, much like Asgard in the MCU. It's a point in space, not necessarily a mystical realm. And we have Apollo, who looks just kind of daffy here in his like red outfit with the yellow cape, and just like, I don't know, Sir Galahad, I suppose they've all got plumes on their head. And I'm very mad because they don't have who like the artists and the writers are on this. Yes.
Nothing?
Macho Man God Apollo possesses hapless Marvin Klee, and now even Venus can't resist his charms. And just to see what you know who the writer on this was, Phil?
Wouldn't be Stan Lee, would it?
It would be Stan Lee. Stan Lee put Loki in the Marvel Universe. There you go. So, more proof that he could still write amazing stories even then. So in the story, Apollo decides that the way he's going to win Venus back, because even though he knows Venus doesn't love him, he can't bear to be without her. So yeah, there's actually a lot of very progressive ideas about you can't make someone love you. Yeah. He loves Venus, and she doesn't love him. Yeah, so then there's a similar relationship between Marvin Klee and Della in this as well, where, you know, he's the hapless, you know, guy in the art department playing his piccolo, which is not well. Although when Apollo plays the piccolo, she loves it. But then again, he is the god of music, so, you know. if anyone's going to rock a piccolo, it's going to be Apollo. Anyway, so Apollo goes to a demon and it's really like it was meant to be like the devil. So why Stanley decided to make it Loki instead of an actual devil? I don't know. I guess maybe he couldn't use the devil, but he could have used Pluto. And when you look at some of the designs of the other gods, they kind of follow designs that they would later put in for the gods in later Marvel comics. So it's weird that he made this choice to make it Loki, which is just more reason to say maybe it is supposed to be Loki. And the idea that, the demons and the gods are all on these other planets, just like Asgard, and Loki was doing his own thing over here. You can make it work if you want to fight with it. But the real point is that the demon switches bodies with Apollo. Apollo can then go to Earth as a spirit and take over Marvin Klee's body, and wackiness ensues. But then once in Olympus as Apollo, Zoroba is the villain, conjures Loki, and then they go to Zeus, who Loki calls his brother. So again, clearly meant to be Pluto, so I don't know why they didn't do that. And says, you have to share your throne with me because I know of a hole in your defenses, and if you don't, I'm going to bring my entire army in here to destroy you all. And Zeus, of course, immediately realizes, oh, okay, something's up, because that's not Apollo that you're standing here with. And calls out to Venus. She has to return. And she basically smartly goes to Olympus, gets Zoroba to come back to Earth with her and be hers because she loves him so much. And basically, once he's on Earth, his godly form dissipates. He's just a normal demon. He gets arrested by the cops because Venus says, arrest him. Because Venus, the first Karen. She controls the cop, man. She's like Mr. Nimbus.
No.
Well, the actual point is that, like Apollo, everyone just, when Apollo takes over Marvin Klee's body, everyone thinks Marvin Klee is impossibly attractive. Even Della falls for him. And that causes this whole conflict and consternation. In the end, because Zoroba has now been captured, Apollo has to basically go back to Jupiter to face his punishment, and he breaks Zoroba out of prison just so he has to go back to the underworld to face his punishment from Loki, which, from all we see from this, we pretty much get the idea that Loki's going to be like, up top, man, that was a great scam. We pulled a great one. No. I totally get that you wanted to get with Venus. Who wouldn't? She's Venus, the goddess of love. But there is definitely this aspect of it where it does seem to be this kind of Star Foxian power where everyone just falls for you if you are the Venus, but it's or Apollo, but that, they can reject it. And clearly Venus does reject everybody who is trying to come at her except for Wit. Wit is the one person who she loves in reciprocal. It's just that question, is his love really his love, or is it just her godly powers manipulating her? Now, in later stories, this is where it gets interesting, it will be revealed that this Venus wasn't really Venus of the Olympian pantheon, but was a siren made by Hephaestus to look like Venus, because for those who don't know, Hephaestus has a creepy relationship with Venus. So he made these sirens that had these godlike powers to control men. And it makes me wonder if there is an aspect of this story where, Hephaestus just created an entire alternate bizarre world of Greek pantheon gods, Roman pantheon gods, that he could, just so that he could have fun with them. Because, Hephaestus, he likes his robots. We know that. He is not a guy who believes in consent. So, to me, it all checks out, and that's a good story for it. No, it's not good, but it works for the character. Hephaestus, kind of a creepo, super genius creepo, but a creepo. It's kind of nice when they do the story in the Hercules Legendary Stories with Kevin Sorbo, because they do make that they actually do have a cantankerous but loving relationship, Venus and Hephaestus, but nowhere nearly as good as the Persephone Hades relationship usually gets played out. Because that's what's really missing from the story of Hercules from Disney, which is how you know that all took place during the spring, because Persephone would have shut that down. Okay. That's enough of Greek mythology. Did you read Loki's, our regular Loki first appearance, which is Journey into Mystery number 85?
Yes, I did. Yep.
And so here's what I'll say is, like, in that first issue of Loki, everyone but Loki acts like Loki. Everybody is manipulating and conniving and trying to get their little entryway into things. And Loki is being kind of straight. He is duplicitous when he's lying to Jupiter at the end, but really, it's never his machinations that's really at play. It's always somebody else being petty and venial and using magic to do it. Here we see Loki truly releasing his petty venial side, especially in how he gets free from the yew tree, which is to make a needle from the tree go into Heimdall's eye so that he cries.
Because the curse is someone had to cry for his plight, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he
and I love it because it is literally a play on words that breaks the spell, which is so perfect for a world of magic, in the idea that it is how you use the words and how the words have meaning. Well, and if I
was going to say, when we think about it, what is the trickster god? It's basically the god of loopholes. You know, Loki always finds the loophole. Exactly,
and that's what he does here, and it's brilliant. He goes to Earth, and again, he goes to Earth. He immediately puts on a suit, which again is what Loki does. Loki doesn't walk around making himself a target. He comes to Earth, he puts on a suit, and he's in the background thinking, okay, what do I do? Well, let's turn some people into negative reflections of themselves. That's going to call, Thor's going to come out, he's going to create antimatter and turn them back to normal. Fair enough. It's not a big deal. But now he has him, and he can engage him, he can pull him into a fight, he can hypnotize him. He realizes that Thor will not give up his hammer willingly, so he has him give his hammer to another Thor, which, it works. It works in the story. But then, of course, once he's gone for 60 seconds, he turns back to himself, which is a fun thing, because then again, we get the skinny doctor going over and says, well, let me try and lift it. And it's like, da-da-da! So,
all those big guys were like, we couldn't lift the hammer, go ahead, puny. And yeah.
And I do think that is something that we are missing from Thor mythos, where he is the big guy, that we never get that Steve Rogers transformation for him. I get why it's a very difficult and complex story to tell. As we see, there are no versions of the Don Blake separated from Thor that do not turn Don Blake evil. It's like, without Thor, he is just the most venal, petty aspects of being a human.
Plus, he wasn't a real human either. Guys like Eric Masterson were actually an actual full human being before they got merged with Thor. Yeah, Don Blake was just created.
Yeah, but you would think that maybe someone could have just, given him more of his humanity instead of just, I guess the real answer to the story is, Odin drinks. And Odin does not always take the time. He is not a Promethean.
I mean,
he is the other guy.
I mean, they really didn't write that way in the first couple, or this first year or two. But it's like, Don Blake was created as a shell for Thor, so it's like Thor was basically filling out this shell. So it's like, without Thor, what is Don Blake? This incomplete entity. Yeah.
Well, although it was interesting, because by the time we get to the TVA, or to be more specific, the Timekeepers, he still has Don Blake. That's sometime later, I want to say in the 70s. So Don Blake is still there. He still has the curse if he leaves his hammer for 60 seconds, which really surprised me. Because I thought they got rid of that much earlier than they did. So, yeah, that is... I'll tell you what issue that was. But we'll talk about that when we get to the timekeepers. But in this moment, we get their fight, and we find out that Loki has one weakness. Like a gremlin, you can't get him wet. And I'm a little torn on it. First off, I love it that is a weakness. It is actually a real weakness for mystical things that they are harmed by water. I don't know why this is not used more. It's like, why is this not? Why is there not a thing where, like, I really want that scene where Loki says, "I can't do magic. I'm wet." But they can't do that because then we can't have that scene that we just saw in the TVA or in Loki, where he dries himself with magic. That would have been perfect, but, you know, it's like, I have magic. I'm wet, so I can't do magic, you know? But then again, obviously, if getting wet would mean he can't do magic, that would mean it would be too easy to defeat him. So I guess we have to work with, it has to be fully underwater and still wet, and just sort of, like, there's a small window of opportunity where the wetness is going to weaken him.
Because I was going to say,
but we should assume that underwater he can't do magic.
Maybe, yeah. Because I was going to say, otherwise it's like anyone could defeat him with like a bucket of water or something.
Exactly. He's not the Wicked Witch of the West. We can't just have that be his one weakness. He's got to be fully drenched, and you got to act fast because he's going to dry. Especially when you're flying him, he's going to dry. And then he, of course, he sends Loki off to Asgard on the hammer. It's interesting because he seems to be stuck to the hammer in this. Although later in Avengers #1, we're going to see that there was a whole process to make the hammer magnetic. So I'm guessing they're just like retroactively explaining how that worked when they get. So that may be our first Marvel retcon. Is like, oh yeah, so this is how he can stick to the hammer and why he doesn't always stick to the hammer.
I mean, they just, you know, they didn't explain the process the first time. In Avengers 1, they explained the process.
Yes, so in this one, but I love the idea that, you know, that within the 60 seconds, Loki flies to Asgard and Mjolnir flies back, which, I mean, it makes sense as much as anything. He's like, it's a good thing it got back just in time, because otherwise, I would have been Don Blake standing on top of the Empire State Building. I don't think he could have caught Mjolnir flying at this speed. Which is like, that's really something you should have thought out before you started this adventure, my friend.
I know, did he have to be on top of a building to do that?
Well, it's the tallest building, so it's the closest to Asgard.
I guess
my point is he probably could have jumped down to, like, the observation deck at least. So that if he does turn back into Don Blake, it's going to be, you know, a little safer for him.
And I guess we're not in the era where he's like, yeah, let me swing this hammer and create just open a portal by swinging my hammer around.
Well, I think he's banned from Asgard at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
Because if we remember in Avengers, he has to ask permission.
Yeah.
To go back in. He has to, you know. So it was just easier to just throw it.
He's still learning. Still learning humility. Yes.
Yeah, it's a process. It's a process, and that brings us to Avengers #1. We will not talk about how thirsty Jane Foster is for gods in this. Again, going back to that first appearance of Loki, where if you're a god, the ladies go gaga.
Oh, he's handsome too.
Yes, Loki, what a romantic name. You see, Stan Lee. See, anyone who wants to say Stan Lee isn't writing this stuff, he's consistent about the thirstiness of mortal women for gods. So
Jane had a type.
She had a type, and, you know, so did Della. And apparently, that's the real question: was he in love with Venus, or was Venus just in love with him? I was willing to reciprocate his control of being called to by a goddess, you know. That's the real question. Zeus we know, didn't care about where he stuck what. But
No.
moving right along, let's get to Avengers number 1, where Loki has, since he has been returned, been exiled to the Isle of Silence, which later gets made it that you can't talk on it, but clearly he can in this first. So this is maybe another retcon they've done over the years to make the Isle of Silence truly silent. And this is where but he still, for what it's worth, can do a lot from the Isle of Silence, including astrally projecting his awareness to Earth and cast believable illusions on Earth, which is pretty impressive to me.
Yeah.
And he and actually manipulate things on Earth because he then redirects the radio broadcast, which is neat. It was either the Fantastic Four show up in this, and it shows again this idea about we need to have a continuity here. Because if there's a nationwide manhunt for the Hulk, and why wouldn't the Fantastic Four go do this? And of course, the answer is because the Fantastic Four is in the middle of sorry, there's an incursion from the negative zone. Don't worry, as we understand it, others are on their way. Which I also do love the fact that the Teen Brigade basically say, yeah, sure, others are on their way. And then Thor shows up. But what I liked about this is just the idea that so Loki, he's looking for someone that can defeat Thor, finds the Hulk, makes the dynamite on the track, but then says, but because it's just an illusion, he hits the track too hard. I don't think he could have hit the track any less hard if the dynamite was there.
I know.
It's like, no, he basically took out the trellis regardless. You can blame it on it being an illusion, but he kind of just, it's like, because it would have been much more, because if he was going to deal with it, he would have, because, and actually what they say is, well, he would have tried to cover it with his body to protect it, but that would have still destroyed the trellis because it would have just forced everything down. So, no matter how you slice it, the physics, the Hulk didn't think this through. The Hulk was not using his intellect the way he should have.
Yeah, no.
And of course, the Hulk saves it, but everyone thinks, oh, the Hulk must have been trying to kill us, and we just narrowly escaped. Because, of course, the trellis does collapse as soon as the train's on the other side, and the Hulk lets go. So really, there's a lot of discussion here. Did the Hulk really destroy the trellis? Was his intention not to destroy the trellis, or was he just not thinking about how much damage he could do? Regardless, the messages go out. Loki is trying to get the message to Thor. Actually, directs the Citizen Band ham radio to broadcast radio, where he knows Don Blake right now is listening to that channel. But of course, when he does that, now it's on every radio tuned to that. So all the other superheroes, including Janet and Hank, who, man, you can see all of the later Hank Pym has a bad relationship with Janet Van Dyne. Oh, yeah. Track work being laid here. It's like everyone's like, they ruined Hank Pym. It's like, I don't think they did. I think maybe they just went back to that original interpretation of, just shut up, Janet. Really, it's like, are you two a couple? Because you guys do not seem to get along very well. Hank Pym is really, he comes off very much like Sheldon Cooper in this. Mm. Which I think is a great interpretation of Hank Pym as someone who just really does have a hard time connecting with people. I mean, they've moved past that now, but clearly in this one, he made her into the Wasp, and yet he's all mad at her the whole time for being the Wasp. So clearly, and you can tell in this, though, that they really wanted to make Ant-Man a thing. Because he's the one whose strategies and ideas are the ones that solve all the problems, It's the ant that finds the Hulk, who is, and not for nothing, I kind of want to know what the backstory is. It's like, oh, wow, good thing we found this robot just as a clown. Wow, it's so strong. Can't possibly be a living being. Glad that we just somehow know it's a robot and it just does what we tell it to do. That is some Osmo level of trickery.
Was the Hulk just standing here going, I am a robot?
I am a robot. I can lift things. Give me a job.
Don't question why I eat.
You see, continuity-wise, you can make the honest argument, well, Horton cells were invented in the 1940s in this universe, and technically, a android-like robot is absolutely something that could exist in this world that you could just happen to find as a traveling carnival. Sorry, traveling circus. We don't see any Ferris wheels, so it's not a carnival. But a traveling circus could find this. It does stretch credulity, but it's like, you know what? In this universe, maybe not to the point of breaking. I just want to know exactly how he ingratiated him into the situation. Like, if this was a time when Banner and Hulk could change back and forth, maybe I could see Banner like, hey, I got this robot here I want to sell you. It's a great robot. I can't use him anymore, so you can have him for free. Just give him a job in your carnival and just wire me the money to this offshore bank account, and that'll work. That works. That makes sense. And then he would go behind the curtain, turn into the robot, put on the clown costume, do the makeup, because he's got the clown makeup, and say, I am Meccano. Beep, bop, borp. It's a flawless plan. It can't possibly fail. Let me juggle some elephants. Yeah, that was that. Honestly, to me, sometimes I think the stories you tell to get to the points in the story are more interesting than the story that actually gets told. But we get there, Ant-Man finds him because he sent his ants out, and all the ants can communicate with him. And one of them sees him, because they do. And then they all go there, and then they all try to reason with the Hulk. But Hulk doesn't want to reason with anyone, because he's the Hulk. And, they try to catch him in the nylon ropes, but he just takes the whole tent with him. And Iron Man tries to stop him, but basically the Hulk just punches him in his power battery, which he now has to repair. And of course, I love you, Stanley. I don't think you know what a transistor is or what it does.
Oh, yeah, when he was flying on his transistor power? Yeah.
His transistor power flight. Maybe that's what they do in that universe. I don't know. It's like, sure, why not? It creates, gravitational flux or something. But first he's running on his solar battery, and that's how he can fly, but he can only fly slowly until he can really kick into the transistor power, so that works. It all checks out, Phil. And they get into their little, and it's kind of funny because really Thor's the one who solves everything. Because there's this whole fight between the Hulk and the rest of the Avengers, and the rest of the Avengers aren't doing very well. I think we can all agree. I mean, they get their zings in, but the Hulk is still the Hulk.
Mm-hmm.
And it all doesn't fall apart until essentially the, Loki, Thor goes to the Isle of Silence. The trolls come up. He has to fight the trolls. He dispatches the trolls. I think he hits them with lightning. And then he magnetizes his hammer, because apparently Loki is magnetic. Now that is a matchup you never think about, is the Magneto versus Loki fight. It's like, oh, but you don't know what I know, Loki. That's God in God's on magnetic. What? It works. It's all in canon. Takes him back, and then he becomes radioactive, and then Ant-Man traps him in the lead-lined container, which, they use to transport nuclear waste before they dump it in the ocean. Because, Phil, I can't imagine that would ever have any long-term negative effects.
Nah, just dump everything in the ocean.
Yeah. And that leads us to the founding of the Avengers, just like in the MCU, which later we get to this. Was that Loki's plan all along? Was he always wheels within wheels, and I will form the Avengers that will protect the Earth so that I may someday rule it. Maybe.
Yeah, but you
works in canon.
Does he have to say that to save face, though, too?
Yes. Oh, man. But, I love Loki as a character, and I love that even at the start of his career, even all the way back to 1948 or whatever that was with Venus, even though Loki himself is kind of not the guy he would become, the stories he's in have that trickery, have that malevolence that we come to love about Loki. The lovable malevolence. And definitely he's a charmer. So all the way back to his first appearance in Journey into Mystery. And of course he's just gone on from there. He's had a couple of his own series. He's had President Loki, one of my favorites, where we find out that actually he was born in, I think it was Mississippi. It was something, you can see all the records are there. Here's my long form birth certificate. It's funny because it's Loki. What was your favorite Loki story that you've read over all of the many years of him?
There have been so many, but I know you had mentioned that last Loki series we were reviewing with Daniel Kibblesmith. That was pretty good, especially when Loki was messing with Tony Stark. And it's always fun when someone messes with Tony Stark.
Yeah. Well, he's easy to mess with.
Oh, yeah. And I'm surprised they don't do this in the MCU. In what was that, the late 80s? Like, how they brought Eric Masterson in as Thor is when Thor kills Loki because he almost, killed a human. And then that was against Asgardian law. So, Odin's in one of his many Odin sleeps. So Heimdall banishes Thor. And then Eric Masterson goes looking for him. Thinks he finds him in Mephisto's realm, but it's Loki's soul, actually, who takes over Odin. And then after that, he roams around for a while until he gets, a body. I think it was in the mid-90s or something. But, I'm surprised they don't do that. It's the Loki who died at the beginning of Infinity War, combines with the variant or something.
Well, we're going to have to see, because as was pointed out in episode 2 of Loki, that, you create a mirror image, that when you create a duplicate, that's not the same as an illusion. Mm-hmm. And you're creating this mirror image, which is why he's using his non-dominant hand to stab Thanos,
Ooh, yeah.
That whole death to me, if you ever watch the Flash Gordon, there's this whole scene where the guy comes to supplicate and then say, I do this for my people, death to Ming, and then he gets stopped and killed. I very much felt that was an homage to Flash Gordon. The 80s Flash Gordon, for those who remember. It's a great scene. And he very much does that kind of a thing. But that it's his non-dominant hand suggesting maybe this is a mirror image.
Oh, yeah, Thor Ragnarok was on last night. There was at least one case of him creating a double there. So, he could still be on Scar for all we know.
Yeah, well, that's the idea. Well, the idea that maybe he did escape, that he did use illusion, that maybe everyone, including the TVA, thinks he's dead, but that he lets the world think that he is dead until he can find a way to control the raging beast that dwells within him.
What if his, I don't know, he astral projected or something? What if that's him and, what's her face, Lady Loki?
Maybe. Well, that's one theory that has been proposed. Although the other theory that I like is that she's actually a variant that was taken as a child. Because Loki wasn't supposed to change his genders as a baby. And that he became, and that essentially when Sylvie says they didn't tell you were adopted, she's actually talking about the TVA because she knows that she was adopted by Odin, but she didn't know that until the TVA told her. She assumes that Loki was told by the TVA. Loki assumes she means told by Odin and Freya, because you also see that she does not remember Freya much, except in that sort of Leia kind of, I remember her briefly as a child. She was very beautiful, when I was just born, very beautiful, but very sad. And then she died. And I was 2 minutes old. Anyway, that's her memories. So I'm guessing that basically, but that's one possibility. We're going to see where it all goes. It might be that, yes, this is a Loki who has changed his identity, had to go undercover, had to hide. What better way to hide than not to look like a Loki or say you're a Loki, say you're a Sylvie. Maybe then don't wear the outfit. Anyway, lots of things going on in Loki. We talk about it on this show. We talk about it over on Full Stream Ahead and Enough Said, where the great Maz Manzur and I are discussing Loki. Probably my favorite Loki story is, I want to say, was it called the West Coast Avengers? When he forms a new Avengers with Hank Pym, and when he pretends to be Scarlet Witch.
Isn't it like the Mighty Avengers?
Mighty Avengers,
I was flipping through an issue or two of that real quick today, too. Yeah.
I love that because it is this whole idea that he brings them together as part of a manipulation. He that wasn't Eternity, that was me. I told you were the Scientist Supreme. He's like, no, I know. It's like, wouldn't you though? And it's delightful because it is Loki as a trickster and just getting mad that, Hank Pym says, no, you're actually a hero. You've always been a hero. It's like, what? I will not accept this. This is not appropriate. Do not tell me I'm a hero. You formed the Avengers. You're the one missing piece that all the Avengers need. We need Loki to be the Avenger. So, and that starts our long path to our current Loki, King of Svartalheim. Niflheim. I'm sorry. King of Niflheim, King of the Frost Giants, Loki Laufeyson, and Frosty, his loyal guard. All right, Philip. Any final thoughts on the great god Loki?
Just thinking, like we were saying, maybe that's another Loki inside the body of Sylvie. I mean, when he was female Loki in the comics, was that Sif's body? Wasn't he in someone else's body?
Yeah, he stole Sif's body.
So,
because Sif's soul was in the body of a woman who was dying. And of course, if she dies in a mortal body, then she dies forever. Oh no!
So, I mean, it is canon that he took over someone's body. So
it could be that he took over Sylvie Lushton's body, which is in keeping with what happens in Sylvie Lushton's story in The Young Masters. So anything's a possibility. Yes. But yeah, I mean, it's all very exciting. I don't know where the new Loki series, is going. We've got 3 more episodes to tie it all up and get to where we need to be. I'm excited. I'm hopeful. We're all going to find out. So.
Yes. Cannot wait.
Okay. So in the meantime, Philip, if anyone wants to talk to you about Loki, or the TVA, which will be our next episode, or anything else, how can they find you? Or all of us? Or buy our merch?
You can get a hold of me or the whole team at emailing capesandlunatics@gmail.com or call the voicemail 614-382-2737. That's 614-38-CAPES. And yes, follow all of our social media stuff. Find the YouTube channel. Yes, there's video of this. Our Patreon, our merchandise, all of it at Linktree, linktr.ee/capesandlunatics.
And, of course, you can always write to me in the old-fashioned email way where our mothers and fathers once sit at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, @gmail.com. Of course, follow me on the Twitter as I live tweet things when I feel like it, like maybe Legends of Tomorrow, or maybe not if I forget and I fall asleep, @CharlieEsser. That's CharlieEsser. Look for the 2 E's in the middle.
For quality. Bing!
Thank you, Maz. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for connecting to us this week. Please come again and super connect with us again. Good night.
Good night. Next episode, Time Variance Authority.
Yes, the TVA. They're here to protect you. Well, not you specifically, but the you that you were supposed to be.
The you from the sacred timeline. So many deep dives. DC could never do this.
No. Well, it all fall apart. Oh, although we'll get a reference to that next episode.
The swamp, more than merely a place. It is a churning, seething, bubbling bed of life, of which you are a part. Once you were a man, a chemist named Ted Salas, until one little experiment went somewhat awry. And you changed. The serum that was to have made you a super soldier, combined with the strange forces in the swamp, to make you over into this, a shambling, mindless mockery of your former humanity. The macabre Man-Thing. Man-Thing was created in the early 1970s to capitalize on the growing monster craze, but under writer Steve Gerber it became something quite different. Experimental, surreal, and very, very weird. It was something I loved as a kid, but does it still hold up today, 4 decades after its initial publication? So join me, Paul Matthew Carr, as I attempt to make sense of this cult classic and analyze each issue, putting it in the context of the time it was written and comparing it to the standards of today. And maybe you too can come to love the world's second most famous swamp-based comic book character as much as I do. The Nexus of All Realities, a Man-Thing podcast, a twice-monthly dive into the bizarre.